Hello, everyone. My name is David Hunter Jr., and welcome to another episode of Post in Black, where we highlight Black excellence behind the lens. We appreciate you tuning in, and we are so excited for today's show because today we have none other than Stephanie Filo with us, an Emmy Award and Peabody Award winning TV and film editor. She has over 43 IMDb credits to her name, working on a variety of different shows. She's making an impact in her community. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is an honor. It is a pleasure. We appreciate your time. And here at Post in Black, before we dive in and start to get all the questions going, we just like to break the ice a little bit. So we have an icebreaker question. It's going to come up on the bottom of your screen for you here in a second. You're going to sail around the entire world. What is the name of your boat?
Wow, that's a tough one. Wow. All the hard-hitting questions up top. Boats have like, I'll just call it, how about like the SS Filo or something?
The SS Filo. I like that. You know what I mean? Because it's intriguing. It still has your name, but it's like, what's the SS stands for? You're like, it's a secret. You don't need to know. Yeah.
I have no idea. But
that's perfectly fine. Well, no, we appreciate you joining us. You're doing all right today. Obviously, on Post in Black, we're highlighting people that are working behind the scenes, editors, film, production, sound, all of that. Would you like to tell the people a little bit about yourself and where are you from starting off?
Sure. I'm originally from Sierra Leone in West Africa. That's where my family's from. And as a kid, we moved to Denver, Colorado, which is the polar opposite of Sierra Leone, obviously. From there, like I studied at University of Denver, went to college there, and then came out here, not necessarily knowing that I wanted to edit, but just kind of fell into this profession. So been at it for a while and just hoping to keep going.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And when you say here, you mean Los Angeles, because I know there's something.
Yes, sorry. Yes,
no, you're perfectly fine. Now, Sierra Leone to Denver, Colorado, that is a big difference. I know people that are listening won't be able to see what I'm doing, but were your parents like this? Did they pick and choose like that? How did you pick Denver out of all the places in the United States?
Well, my grandparents on my mom's side lived in Colorado, so that's how we ended up.
Wow.
How we ended up there, because it is kind of a random spot to just pick out of nowhere. So luckily we at least had them when we came over here. Otherwise, I think that would have been, it was already shocking, like culture shock for sure. But it was good to have family there.
Right, it's good to be around family. What was it like growing up in Denver, Colorado? Obviously, you're coming from a different background, and now you're growing up there. So we'll talk about the post-production side in a second. But what was it like just growing up in that environment?
It's so I don't know if you've been to Colorado, but it's not maybe the most diverse place.
Yeah. I've only flown through one time. Yeah,
it's not the most diverse spot. So I think that was kind of a big challenge there, was just that I didn't look like anybody. I have like an immigrant family. Like, my dad for sure was the only like African man that anyone had ever seen in my town. So it was it had a lot of challenges in that sense, just because it's like you don't necessarily have a lot of people that look like you around you. Luckily, there was, for some reason, a Sierra Leonean community in like another town in Colorado. So we were able to stay close with them and like kind of maintain culture that way, and just keep that community going. But, outside of that, it's, I was the only like Black person at my high school. And, that in itself comes with challenges, because people just you don't relate necessarily to people in a lot of ways, and they don't relate to you maybe in a lot of ways. So it's just kind of like, just finding ways to navigate that landscape was an interesting time.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's really interesting yourself, and taking that sort of dynamic. You're going to a place, now you're growing up, and there's a lot of people that don't look like you. What is that? How does one growing up in Denver now in Colorado, how does one get, intrigued with entertainment and get in that path there? Because I imagine you really didn't see a lot of that where you were.
My original career was as a dancer, actually.
Okay.
So I always kind of like was into entertainment in that sense. And I was a professional dancer for a while, and I always just knew, for like, just in the back of my head, I always wanted to be involved in TV and film, and I just didn't know in what capacity. I know when when I was younger in like middle school, I saw the movie Seven, which I probably shouldn't have watched at that age, but I was obsessed. I was obsessed with the opening title sequence for that movie. I don't know if you can picture it, but it was so cool to me at the time. And I was like, how do I like recreate this? Like, I was always just kind of thinking of like ways to try to make something cool like that. But I didn't really process that like editing was a path that I could that I could take. I just always was like, oh, I want to do something in TV and film, and just like, had that thought. So I eventually moved out to LA and got in this spot.
You had this in you from that childhood age. Now you're going through high school, but you still have that bug of wanting to get into entertainment. What was the step to actually move to Los Angeles or California in general? Did you have the blessing from your parents as well?
Well, so like I said, I was dancing professionally, and then I was a cheerleader for the Denver Broncos. And I did that for one season from 2005 to 2006. Okay. And I had just finished college, and I was like, I really just, if I'm gonna make this TV and film thing work, like I have to just take the leap and try to move out there. And I, when I came out here, I was still kind of dancing. I found a dance agent and still was, doing that as well. But I was kind of just like, I think it just in my mind, I was like, if I don't move to LA now, like I'm never going to try to make that step, and there's not a ton of entertainment opportunities, I guess, in Colorado. So it's like, this is the place that I kind of needed to come.
Yeah. And now you're making things very intriguing, because you have this background of being a cheerleader, having the dance background professionally, getting representation as a dancer. So what you're telling us is you were kind of good. You had some skills, right? So that being said, what made you, now you're working in post, but what made you not want to pursue something to be more in front of the camera or pursue that out here in LA? Because that's what a lot of people seem to want to do.
I think I always just knew that, because as a dancer, you can only dance for so long, right? After you're a certain age, like there's not maybe the same window of opportunity for you. And I just wanted to do something where I could still be creative, still kind of occupy that same space in my mind, even though obviously editing is not the same at all, but it does occupy that same kind of like creative part of your brain. So I think I just like wanted to, always knowing that I wanted to do TV and film stuff, I was like, I need to like explore what pathways there are there. And I did, even once I started editing, I was still dancing, still like auditioning and like in random like commercial stuff. But I'm just like kind of an awkward person. So I'm not really I'm not an actress or anything. So it's like, there's only so much you can do dance-wise, in this sense. So
well, that's funny to me, because now I want to hear about this transition. Like you how did you even get that opportunity? What even made you say like, oh, editing, that's a job? Like, what was the bug that kind of got you from dancing to now, oh, I can do some editing and that? Like, what is that next step? What did that look like?
So when I got out here, I just kind of was like harassing anyone I could find. I was like, who can I meet? Like what pathways can I take? So I was just kind of like doing a lot of informational interviews and just like reaching out to people. And I was working at Smashbox Studios, which is a photography studio that rents out space in the back for different productions. And there was one like French documentary that was editing in the back. And so I had developed kind of a relationship with them because they were renting space at Smashbox. And you just mentioned, like, I really want to get involved. Like, I would love to explore, editing or, post-production just to see what it's like. And they happened to have an opening for a night assistant editor. So I got a job as a night assistant editor. I was working during the day at Smashbox and then working for them at night. And I just kind of like fell in love with it. I was like, this is cool because it's like, you can play with the pacing and you can play with the music and you can do all of these things that as a dancer as well, you know, you're so involved with storytelling in like a musical sense. So I kind of just gravitated towards it because you kind of, it's like you kind of occupy like I said, the same part of your brain, even though it doesn't look like it from the outside.
No, it's a similar thing that you were able to connect those pieces. And I think to one thing that to your point, my brother obviously is the founder of Post in Black, Daniel K. Hunter. The dots that you guys connect as editors is different than other people, because you have to see a story, you have to see certain things that we don't see. So you connecting the dancing to the editing, it just is more proof that that's what you were meant to do. Now, a lot of times we've interviewed guests and they talked about working overnight before they start doing that. How was it working in your first gig as an editor overnight, already having a job during the day? You said you were excited, but I'm sure there were some long hours and some stories and some roadblocks, right?
Yeah, there were a few challenges on that one because, you know, I had used Final Cut, like it was being cut on Final Cut Pro back in the day. And I had done some projects in college using Final Cut, but not like really using Final Cut. So it was kind of like a learning curve of just figuring out like what I was doing. And I was kind of there by myself because it was night. So I was like, I really can't mess this up. And I would be constantly just like looking up, like, I think this is how I do this thing. I think that was my biggest challenge. But then also, obviously, I was very tired because during the day at Smashbox, it was like a pretty labor intensive work day. And then, you know, just going straight into working at night. It was I definitely got tired by the end. I think I kind of burned myself out a little bit, but
how long were you doing that job, or doubling up with both of them?
It was a couple months at least. I want to say like 2-3 months. But it wears on you. Luckily, like I was much younger, and so I think it was easier to kind of deal with weird hours like that. But
wouldn't be something you'd sign up for now.
No, I would leave at like 3-4 in the morning. I had a scooter as well. So it was like kind of driving at like weird hours. And,
and what part of LA were you living in at the time, if you don't mind?
In Hollywood.
Okay. It was, you know, people don't understand Hollywood. They call it Hollyweird. You know what I mean? It's not all, not all what you want to see.
Yeah. Hollywood at 3 and 4 in the morning is like not the greatest.
Not the greatest. Right. So you have this job, this first editing job, and you realize, okay, this is a great start, but I know this isn't sustainable. Maybe this isn't actually what I want. We hear a lot in editing and entertainment in general, but in editing, your next job is based off of the relationships from that first one. So how did you transition to kind of pick up the pace and move on?
So from that documentary that I was working on at night, the editor on that project named Ben Meyer recommended me to a post-production house called Fancy Film.
Okay.
And he had a good friend over there named Bill McCumber, who was like my first major post mentor. But so he basically recommended me to that post house. And I interviewed with them and they're like, okay, we're going to bring you in. Like you can be, you know, full-time staff with us. And I was just like, oh, okay. I was just so excited, but like shocked that I, you know, after all this, like I finally found that job that I wanted. So it is totally like I, you know, connected with the people on the first project and they recommended me to the next. So
and you mentioned something even early on. You talked about, you know, working and now you're coming into an industry, you're still sort of new to it. You were a woman in this industry. Were you seeing other women that you were working with? And then was there anybody else Black that was working in these areas for you, or was it recommendations from people who didn't look like you?
Yeah, I was editing for 10 years before I met another Black editor, before I met a single other one. I thought I was the only person. And so I was just like, this is a whole lot of pressure, being the only one. So yeah, I really, you know, I think it's gotten a bit more diverse, which is great. But starting out, you know, it was pretty much only like white men. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? You know, I mean, it's a similar story. It's the reason why Post in Black started. But why do you think that is? Do we not know about the jobs, or are we not able to get them? What is that?
It's a good question. I think so much of our jobs, like you were saying before, is like we get recommended from the previous job or
Mhm.
from different people. So partially it's like having access maybe to those contacts who will refer you to someone.
Yeah.
I think that was definitely something initially for me that was a challenge, is just like I didn't know anybody. I didn't have that network of people who I've worked with, who trust my work, who can give me
Hmm.
that opportunity. And I think people aren't always as willing to give people opportunities that they haven't worked with or don't have like a close connection to. So it's like this cycle that's
Yeah.
not helpful for diversifying
Yeah.
post.
Because it's if it's that cycle, we want to change it, but then you still can't really change it. I see it in terms of like, and we don't really mince words. We're not getting crazy, but we're Black, and we don't really see opportunities come for Black people. And then when the people who are in positions, they want to hire Black people, they go to the only Black people that they know and say,
Mhm.
well, do you know anybody? Instead of actually painting throwing a wide net to cast individuals to give fresh starts.
Mhm.
Have you seen that kind of come into play on your end as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think
Yeah.
it's always, yeah, just asking people that you know, or people who know someone that you know. And I
Hmm.
know, for me, if it's, 10 years of editing before I meet another Black editor, if someone asks me for one, like I'm like, there's me, I don't know anybody else. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I think it all comes down to like that,
Yeah.
networking and community. But if that's not there already, it's hard to
Right.
create. I think also, post is something that inherently from the start was like a very white male field,
Hmm.
male driven field. And a lot of people, before we kind of moved into Avid and, being digital, it's like I know a lot of editors who got the job because their dad was like an editor, or you know what I mean? It's like just these sort of legacy positions. So it's like a process of changing this cycle
Yeah.
because there's new people coming in who need work. If
Now,
that makes
no,
sense. Bit
no,
of a
it
ramble
makes perfect
answer.
sense. No, it's perfect sense. Trust me, we're out here. We're just talking and chopping it up. One of the things that you mentioned, two things, and I want to touch on one of them a bit later. But in terms of that 10-year period where you're working and you're getting opportunities, now I
Mhm.
want to touch on something that's not always about race, but we are posting Black. Did you see something in regards to the type of projects that you were able to edit? Were you only getting certain projects, or were you like getting that diverse, like, hey, Steph, we got something for you, and you get the project and it's like a Black cast or a Black storyline? Or were you able to kind of work on a variety of projects?
I think I was lucky enough to work on a variety because of, working at Fancy Film
Hmm.
initially. They have a lot of different projects. So they do a lot of different, like, they do online, like finishing. So they do color, mix, everything, but they also cut different things. And so, yeah, I think I was lucky enough to kind of get my hands on some different projects, but I did also have a lot of this sort of like this, the optics. We need to have a Black
Yeah,
editor for optics, or make sure
yeah,
there's at least one on the team.
yeah.
So I did have a couple of those for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, no, it's something. And then kind of skipping to what your point was, obviously not trying to bypass 10 amazing years of work, but you finally meet another Black editor. What was that like? What was that first conversation like? You know what I mean? And how did that kind of change how you work moving forward, or other opportunities that came to you?
Um, well, that was a project that had me and three other Black editors on it. So I think we all walked into the room like,
Wait,
what? Wait,
are you supposed to be here?
right? We're like, where have you been? Like, what is this?
Mhm.
So it was that was a really special experience, just because I was like, I'm not alone. Like, wow, there's others, there's more of us out here. But
Yeah.
also, I think, you develop sort of a connection, maybe a deeper connection, because you've had similar experiences, and you might be able to tell have a similar lens when telling stories.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was a special moment for sure.
Right. No, I think that's amazing. And your career seems to have had a lot of different experiences, you know, your background from dancing to coming out and still doing some acting, still doing some commercials and still editing. And then, you know, you have these awards that come with the work you've done, you know, an Emmy, a Peabody Award. How did that change your career, and what actually, you know, it changed your career in terms of the type of work you do now, or the expectation?
Um, I think, well, has it changed my career? You know, I was super excited about the project that I won the Emmy for, because it
Mhm.
was basically, it was, I do a lot of social impact campaign work as well on the side.
Right.
And this was basically a series that was highlighting underrepresented voices.
Mhm.
Um, and the documentary that we won the award for was about ICE deportations, and a family that had been separated because of ICE. So it was really like a special project as a first gen um, immigrant being here, and just also being able to shed light on you know, voices that aren't heard. I think you know, that was sort of maybe life changing a bit for me, because it felt
Mhm.
like, oh, people see us, like they like these underrepresented voices. They finally want to hear
Yeah.
people, you know, tell these stories through these different lenses.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know if it's totally like shifted my career at all. This all happened, you know, I won this during quarantine. This was like
Yeah.
last year. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's hard to gauge that, but I think you know, it does add a little bit of pressure, because I'm like, shoot, now I have to be, you know, I'm always a perfectionist anyway, but I'm like,
Yeah.
shoot, now I really have to just try to nail everything I can and keep everyone around me proud.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing just fine in that department and keeping people proud. In terms of, you know, the type of work you do, obviously you've worked on a variety of projects. You know, we mentioned the award and the Girls Empowerment Board that you're sitting on, and everything that you're doing. But now going back into a little bit more of post production, what do you prefer as an editor? You know, you've done everything from TV and film and documentaries. Is there something that you lean into more, or that catches your eye, or you go towards the story, or do you go towards the check? I know that's also a question too.
I think I always just try to pick, you know, when I can, I try to make sure I'm on projects that like I'm just passionate about telling that
Hmm.
story. I think this industry is so easy to kind of pigeonhole people in one direction or the other.
Right.
And also as a freelancer, I think I get like a little bit like antsy if I'm in one specific genre for too long.
Okay.
So, you know, I just try to bounce around as much as I can, because I think also, you know, it's so important to always be kind of on top of your game, but also, you know, knowledgeable in all of these different things, because it makes you stronger in each one. If you're like, okay, I can apply this kind of technique to this
Yeah.
moment, you know, and then you know, and then it makes the storytelling easier.
Yeah. What would that you got me thinking now. What do you feel like makes you a strong editor? That when, you know, somebody's saying, why do we need Stephanie on this project? What do you feel like is your selling point that you bring besides your personality and everything? Or that could be it.
Um, I mean, I think it's just, you know, I'm very obsessive about sound and music and pacing.
Okay.
Probably going back to like my dance background, but
Yeah.
you know, I always try to you know, build out things as much as I can and try to make
Mhm.
it feel like you're maybe in a more like immersive experience, because I know a lot of times if you're watching something that's been edited that has like no sound behind it, you're just kind of like, oh, this is a little hollow, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
always try to there's not always a ton of time to necessarily like really build out these things, but
Mhm.
that's something that I know, at least personally, that I'm always really kind of like a perfectionist about, is kind of like making sure the sound and everything
Oh
kind of
no.
works.
That is spot on. Again, my background came from primarily being in front of the camera and performing. And my brother, when he was editing, he would go to the post houses. And he was like, "You want to come?" So I'm on these different studio lots all the time. He's with like Dane Davis and Dane Tracks, and I'm going everywhere with him. And I remember him distinctly one day looking at me and saying, "Look, I support you, I love you, but if you're ever in a movie or a show that doesn't have good sound, I'm not watching." And I was like, okay, is that, and that came from his background being in music and all of that. So that is something that's always stuck with me. I'm like, if my brother does not approve of this, it is not good for me to be in this project. Now, in terms of post-production in general, as we're about to get you out of here, and just thank you for all the wisdom you're dropping. COVID has changed so much right now. And what do you see the industry kind of direction? You know, it's kind of my brother always says it's like a PC and AC, you know, pre-COVID, after COVID. How has that changed your work and even the future of the jobs that you're going to get?
You know, it's been a challenge, to say the least, kind of learning these new sort of remote workflows that we all kind of got thrown into and seeing what sticks. You know, I know it's because it's such a collaborative job, it's a bit challenging to cut anything, because you can't really walk next door to the, you know, the person's office next door and say like, hey, do you like this? Is this working? You know, or you can't go talk through like the story of something. If you're like, okay, if this happens, then does this happen? You can't really do that. So, you know, for me, I've tried to, luckily on the projects I've worked on during this, we've had like Slack or just, you know, being able to text people, but it's a whole new experience. And there's also the element of like, you know, if before COVID, you would have a screening with someone and they would sit in your edit bay with you and you watch it, and you would you can feel like, oh, they looked at their phone at this moment. Maybe that doesn't work. I need to like amp this little section up. And you can't do that now. So that's kind of been the biggest challenge. There's a difference of like, you know, if you're on Zoom or Evercast streaming a cut and you can see people's faces now, that's something that I actually kind of like, because you couldn't, if you're sitting in someone's if you're sitting in like your edit bay screening something, you can't just stare people down that are watching.
Like, do you like this? Yeah, do you like?
So now there is kind of a nice element of like, you can see their face, and if they like genuinely say it's a comedy, if they laughed in that moment, or, you know, if that made them feel any type of way, you can actually see it now. So you know, it's a tough shift, but I feel like maybe there's like a hybrid or something that might happen. You know, I could see a scenario where, like, say people are editing remotely, and then when you screen something, maybe you're physically in an office. Something like that might work.
It's a lot of changes, and you brought up about, you know, Zoom. I think, you know, you mentioned Slack, and I almost started laughing, because I'm like, I have about 5 different things for Slack on there. It's crazy. Before we get you out of here, you know, the last thing I ask you is, you know, being someone that's Black working in post-production, what would you like to see happen in this industry for more people like yourself, like post-production professionals in the future? What is something that you would like to see that wasn't there when you were coming into it, and that you'd like to be for others?
I mean, I would like, obviously, to see more Black people in post. I would just like to be able to walk on a show and say like, oh, I'm not the only person here, or I'm not here for the optics. Like, I would love a world in which, you know, people are just given the opportunities to come in on these different shows, where it's like, you don't have to necessarily, you know, recommend someone you've worked with. Like, you can give someone a chance, an opportunity to prove themselves, you know what I mean? And just, you know, create an environment that's, I guess, welcoming and inclusive for everybody. You know, I would love to see that. I would love to, you know, help bring in new folks who are wanting to get into post but don't know how.
And that question right there actually lends me to the follow-up really quickly. Why should someone, especially, we're speaking to, you know, everybody's watching this, we have all races watching it, but we're speaking to these young people, these people in high school and college. Why should someone that's Black want to get in post-production? You know, they're like, I want to be in front of the camera. Why should someone even want to pursue a career?
Because I think in post, you have so much control of the final story, you know, and there's so many stories that are being told where it would be fantastic to have a lens, someone's lens, say a Black person's lens on a Black story. It would be great to have someone who's able to look at something and understand the nuance in specific storytelling, just to give our stories authenticity. And
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone's watched something at some point where you're like, okay, this is like a Black story, but very clearly like no Black people weighed in on this.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that it's really like, yes, it's important to see people on screen and see representation in that sense, but it's also just so important to know that the representation was happening across the board, where everyone was able to like equally tell their stories in a way that was authentic and real, and where they weren't there for the optics. They're
Yeah.
there to just tell the story.
Because they're qualified to tell the story. Yeah. Now we're gonna let you end on there. This has been an amazing, amazing interview. What are you working on now? Where can people follow you and stay up to date with what you have going on?
Well, right now I'm working on a Black Lady sketch show,
Okay.
which is so much fun.
Show. Amazing show.
It's so much fun. And yeah, I mean, I like I said, I'm freelance, so once that's done, I'm not sure what I'll be on, but just hopefully something that is equally good content with good people.
Yeah, no, more jobs are coming. And obviously, Posting Black, we just want to thank you again for your time. We do highlight the technical aspect, but we want to get to know what you're doing behind the scenes and know the people who are editing some of the shows and the things that we watch. So thank you, Stephanie Filo. You can follow her, all the information there on the bottom of your screen. This has been an amazing episode of Posting Black. Make sure you follow us at Made for More Entertainment. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay up to date with everything that's going on here at Made for More. Thank you.